supermarkets are available.
Exactly.
This is Romford.
It should have been at least Waitrose, Peter. I mean, this is...
Oh, we should get sponsorship from Asda.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that classed as product placement, is it?
It is.
It does actually, James.
What's your next stop, Peter?
I've got to change buses at Romford. So next stop.
Next stop, Romford. We can make a series out of this, can't we?
Yes.
I know if you can't get out more often.
Yeah.
Number 49 from Romford.
Yeah. Watch out for them.
They did a series on the night bus, didn't they, across London, actually? I think it was 52.
Oh, well, we could do the same with Peter, couldn't we? You know,
Yeah.
My trip home.
All the people that they met on the night bus going from, I think it was Edgware or something like that, through to Victoria and on. Yeah.
I'll get you, Butler.
But that would require Peter talking to people, and I don't think he likes people enough to talk to them.
Oh, crikey.
Oh, that was stupid of me. I was coughing and I muted Caroline so that I could cough. But...
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
So, yeah, we can see you, and you've got enough light on you to be illuminated.
Thank you.
That's good. We were on a chat earlier on. Right, we better get moving. You'll notice that there's an absence of a speaker, and that's because he had trouble over the weekend because he actually installed Windows 10.
Deserves everything then.
Yeah, he does. And all of his computer now works after he's trying to do it all at the weekend, but except for sound. And David tested him last night for sound, and it didn't work. And I've tested him tonight to try and get it solved, and we can't find out what that is. So he should have bought a Mac. I don't know. That's James Martin.
Yeah.
You're right, James.
Wonderful machines.
Spot on, James.
Have you got a Mac, James?
We had a conversation yesterday, last night, where he was on the mobile phone. I was. We were both on Zoom, and we're going. I said, "I can't hear you, Kieran. Can't hear you." And he goes, instantly, a mobile phone, and we completed the training without any sound on the. He said, "No, Martin will fix it because he's good at that sort of thing."
No, I didn't, so I'm not.
I think it's Windows 10, Martin.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion I think it was Windows 10. Even if it wasn't, I blame that, so that it didn't look stupid. Right, well...
Still a ring.
If you could all mute your microphones, and we're now going to treat you to an impromptu presentation which has got nothing to do with Rotaract whatsoever, and hopefully you'll enjoy it for the next 15 minutes. If not, then hang in there until the end, or just stick your teddy bears up and I'll shut up. Okay, so this is actually a talk that I was going to do a couple of weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks ago, but there was only a few people on there. Brian, you were talking, but you've muted yourself, so... okay, so welcome everyone, and I'm going to do a talk tonight. I'm actually going to talk to you about sex, death, violence and cruelty, and that's actually just before the sort of 9 o'clock the 9 o'clock threshold. So it starts in the Middle Ages, and it was prevalent today. It's behind closed doors in nearly every household in the country. It involves kings, queens, farmers, children and bishops, and not in that order necessarily. It's an intriguing insight into the origin of nursery rhymes. So, nobody put the thumbs up, did they? How many times have you actually recited Hey Diddle Diddle or Humpty Dumpty to your children, grandchildren, and never wondered what it actually meant? Nursery rhymes were actually written originally for a much different purpose to which they serve today. There's a fascinating history about nursery rhymes that we love, and their history and origin is often very dark indeed. My fascination actually began some time ago, mainly because I'm actually quite interested in history, but I also read somewhere about goosey goosey gander. And now, I know that makes me a little bit of a sad soul, but when I tell you that this nursery rhyme represents in itself quite a salacious way. It's you'll see what it makes more interest than you'd imagine. Goosey, goosey gander, where do you wander? Upstairs, downstairs, in the lady's chamber. There I met an old man who wouldn't say his prayers. I took him by his left leg and chucked him down the stairs. Now, you'll be pleased to know that I'm not going to recite every nursery rhyme tonight, but I'm going to treat you to the verses of the rhyme as we talk about them. So, back to the plot. As you might imagine, it's got nothing to do with geese. Well, not the feathered variety anyway. In days gone by, the goose was a term that was used for prostitutes, and some of the most famous were known as the Southwark geese. And the Southwark geese were licensed brothels that existed back from the Middle Ages. Henry II actually set up, with a royal charter protection, along with a chain of them in Cherbourg. I mean, you might actually have a sign outside of it saying, "Ye old knocking shop by royal appointment." Probably the first franchise ever, in fact. Some historians date these stews or brothels along the Thames back to Roman times. So if ever you think back about talking about goosebumps actually refer to the swellings caused by venereal disease. So next time you're outside saying, "Oh God, I've got goosebumps," then think again. Okay. It was prevalent amongst the dissolute wealthy. So, as I said, next time you're cold. So we now go on to Henry VIII. So when he closed the brothels in Southwark, reinforced by and ordered by his daughter Elizabeth, it caused the geese to actually migrate to the streets and theatres of the day. There was a great difficulty in closing these stews, and they resulted in actual revolts and sieges. It was not for another 100 years, in 1650, that prostitution actually ceased to be associated with the theatres of Southwark, mainly due to Cromwell's Commonwealth closing them down. The theatres, that is, because he was a very sombre man. So, what of goosey gander? Research shows that the first part of the rhyme actually refers to the spread of venereal disease, and it was everywhere, emanating from the lady's chamber. As the church owned the land that the brothel stood on, no surprise there, in the 16th century, the closing of the stews was more about a land grab than it was about the Catholics on a moral high ground. Taking the land of Southwark also took the power from the Bishop of Winchester, who previously controlled it. The fact that the bishop controlled the brothels enabled Henry VIII to put a spin on the link between venereal disease and Catholicism, which actually played into his hands. There I met an old man who wouldn't say his prayers. The old man refers to the Catholic religion, and refers to the New English Prayer Book, which was published by the Church of England by Bishop Cranmer, and this book was actually in English rather than in Latin, and the Catholics actually refused to use it, and ultimately they were persecuted. Finally, the left leg or left footer. Anybody know what that is? If they do, stick their thumb up, and then you'll see if you're right. Okay. The left leg or left footer was actually an English derogatory term for Catholics. So people who were called left-leggers were actually Catholics, and so therefore there's more to nursery rhymes than you think. There I took an old man by his left leg and threw him down the stairs. Rhymes developed to reflect social history, and it was a way of satirising and satirically portraying the excesses of the day, often against aristocracy, without getting your head chopped off, of course. These subversive songs travelled the masses through the alehouses and gatherings that bore no relationship to the sanitised nursery rhymes we actually tell our children today. The origins were certainly not written to teach or entertain children, but as I've said, they were used to satirise the rich, famous and the noble. A bard dare not openly criticise his king and queen, as this would have certainly led to some punishment, even death or torture. So they wrote enigmatic nursery rhymes to tell the tale with nicknames and ambiguity. Because of this ambiguity, some of the rhymes have more than one interpretation, but the more plausible take account of the society and the news that was written in that time. So if you look at the nursery rhymes in the context of the period they were written in, or purported to be written in, then it actually makes a bit more sense sometimes. For example, Humpty Dumpty, excuse me, Humpty Dumpty. Anyone know what Humpty Dumpty represents? Stick your thumb up if you do. Okay. Humpty Dumpty in the 1400s was actually a common nickname for fat people, so I suppose I need to stop there. But some actually say it refers to Richard III and the Battle of Boswell on August 22nd, 1485. The fight for the throne between Richard and Henry Tudor. Richard sat on his horse on top of Albion Hill, I think it is, or Albion Hill, ready for battle when he was murdered. However, actually, the most accepted origin for this, and you'll see why, is during the English Civil War, 1642 to 49, where a Humpty is actually the name of a small but very powerful cannon. And that cannon was actually mounted on the wall of St Mary's Church in Colchester. And in fact, if you go to Colchester today and go to St Mary's Church, you'll actually see a little plaque, I think, about it. And that was to defend against the siege in the summer of 1648. At the time, Colchester was a parliamentary stronghold, but it had been captured by the Royalists, who held it for 11 weeks. When Colchester was taken back, the Humpty was knocked off the wall and it broke. And the king's men couldn't actually fix it, and that is a recorded fact. So there lies the tale of Humpty Dumpty. Okay. Now, if we were to talk about the tale of Little Jack Horner, there's some fascinating stories that go along with that. We all know about his thumb and his plum, and he was a real person. He wasn't called Jack, he was actually called Thomas Horner, and he was the steward to the Abbot of Glastonbury during the reign of Henry VIII. The period was the dissolution of the monasteries, and it tells the story of how it came to settle in a comfortable home. That home actually is near Newbury and is called Mells Manor, so you probably know that, Alan. So Mells Manor is the focus of the plum. Thomas had been sent by the king. Thomas had been sent to the king with a set of title deeds to buy off the king's interest in Glastonbury Abbey, by offering a number of magnificent properties in lieu of the abbey. Hoping to appease the king, the nervous abbot, Richard Whiting, sent the king a special gift, and it was a pie containing the deeds of 12 manor houses. They put them in a pie to avoid the robbers on the way. Thomas, though, was a more unscrupulous person, and he was dispatched with the pie, and the not so loyal steward actually pulled out one of these deeds for himself, being Mells Manor, a plum piece of real estate, which is actually still in the Horner family up to 2010. And they deny all knowledge of that nursery rhyme. The corollary to the story is that the bribery of the king didn't actually work, and the dissolution of the monasteries that ensued from 1536, 1540, Richard Whiting was subsequently executed, but the Horner family actually got away with it. The moral of that story is greed and treachery paid off for Jack, but bribery is quite a bad idea. The Horner family, as I say, deny any wrongdoings by their ancestors, claiming it was bought fair and square, but I'll leave you, who knows? Okay. Jack and Jill was probably the most famous nursery rhyme, and it's also the most difficult to actually find its origin. There are many claims that it represents incest right the way through to being about Louis XVI. Even Shakespeare said, "Jack shall have Jill and naught shall go ill," whatever that means. Now, Jack was a common name in those throughout the ages, and it was another name for a knave. The version that has got the most interest was about sex. Uphill to fetch a pail of water is a euphemism for having sex, and where losing your crown, well, I'll leave you to imagine that. The most plausible origin, though, is actually the Louis XVI, who was considered weak and ignorant. In 1770, he married Marie Antoinette, who, as we know, heavily influenced the decision-making. Jack and Jill, Louis and Marie, Louis became king in 1774, referring to up the hill. France was in financial crisis. Heavy taxation upset the masses. In order to quell the flames of revolution, Louis remitted some of the more harsh taxes to fetch a pail of water. The French bourgeoisie, however, refused to allow these reforms, and in June 1789 the Bastille was razed. Jack fell down. In 1792, France was declared a republic. The king was tried for treason and lost his head to the guillotine on the 24th of January 1793 in Paris, broke his crown. Shortly after, Marie Antoinette was executed in October that year. Jill came tumbling after. So it seems to reflect the mood of the period when you actually look at it in that context of that time. So as you can see, many of the nursery rhymes have got an anti-establishment, a sexual or a social comment, and can be a fascinating, rich historical perspective. I'll leave you actually with Bar Bar Black Sheep. For the farmers amongst us, if there are any farmers or people who are in farming, then this will actually relate to you. There's not much changes because this is actually about taxation. The wealth of England was largely as a result of the trade in wool, hence the wool sack in Parliament. During feudal times, taxes did not go to the Chancellor or even the EU. In the Middle Ages, farmers, the little boy, were required to give 1/3 of their income, which could be in goods, to their master, the lord, the local lord, and 1/3 to the dame, and the dame being the church. And then they kept 1/3 for themselves. Of course, if you really wanted to bleat about this, then it was the sheep who started it and actually got nothing. So,
oh dear, Martin, bleat about it.
So, in summary, nursery rhymes is a sort of pop culture of the Middle Ages. From the golden age of rhymes emanating from the Tudor period to the end of the Stuarts, Britain's most formative years span 250 years, bringing with it commentary on the Reformation, the Act of Union, Civil War, along with the growth of the Empire, Shakespeare, King James's Bible, Isaac Newton, and much more. Rhymes were handed down to teach the children the beauty of the tale with a hidden depth, with heavy words thrown lightly. So hopefully that was reasonably entertaining, and I'll open up for questions. Somebody's got a microphone. I don't know who it is. Let's see.
Martin,
Yeah.
when I was at school, I learned Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jill came down with half a crown, but not for fetching water. So actually, my version was probably more closer to the truth.
Could be. Yeah. What's half a crown?
2 and 6.
What's 2 and 6?
Most of us.
Yeah. Mary had a little lamb. She also had a pig. No, she also had a bear. I've often seen a little lamb, but I've never seen a bear.
No, it's very little lamb, she kept it in a bucket. Every time it scrambled out, the bulldog tried to push it back in again.
Martin, I'm disappointed that you omitted the hickory dickory dock, the mouse ran up the clock.
Right. Tell me about it then, Herbert.
I don't know anything, that's why I'm asking you.
That's why I omitted it.
There you go.
Hickory dickory dock, 2 mice ran up the clock. The clock struck one, the other one got away.
Wasn't the Ring of Roses connected to the Black Death?
The Ring of Roses is purported to be with Black Death. There are some other stories to do it, but I think on balance that probably fits the bill. And I think, as I said, one of the things that I found with historical perspective is there's more than one version, then you have to look at sort of the period it was relating to, and in the context of the period it was relating to, whether what was actually going on in society at that time. So it's quite possible that that was relating to that.
It would be very early recognition of how disease was spread, though.
Yeah, well, I think they accepted the fact that it was spreading. They just didn't know how to deal with it. So,
well, it was a tissue. We all fall down, and that would be very early recognition.
Yeah. Especially if it was 1400s Black Death rather than the 1600s Black Death. So, yeah.
Can I just...
Sorry, it's a big leap from historical facts to children's nursery rhymes.
Yeah.
You know, how did that transition come about?
That was in Victorian times, actually, Eddie. In Victorian times, the Victorians were sort of interested in all sorts of macabre. I mean, you can actually look at very often Victorian museums. They often had things like fetuses with 3 legs, and they used to put on display stuffed animals and different things. But that was a period of macabre discovery, really. And I think what that was it was really a transition during that Victorian period to sanitise them a little bit and tell them to their children. I think it came in Victorian times when that was actually changed.
If I could broaden the base of it a little bit, Martin, which might be interesting, have many of us heard of the Victorian nursery rhymes, which were all had great meanings? The German one, which was called Strollpeter.
No, enlighten us.
Well, I was brought up with this as a child, and all my children and grandchildren have had it as well. It can be quite gruesome in some ways, but it's very rhyming, and it's all to do with teaching children either to be good, to eat their food, to go to sleep, or generally be good for Christmas. I mean, as an example, one that comes to my mind, which I can still remember, but I'll only give you a couple of lines, is when the children have been good, that is, be it understood, good at night and good all day, good at work and good at play, they shall have the pretty things Father Christmas always brings. It goes on quite lengthy. Right. But it's very, very good. And there is a moral to every single story, and it is very graphically done. And you can get it in all good bookshops in Oxford, and I mean, you might even get some in Bath and places like that.
Edited by the infamous Herbert Chatters.
No, I think Alan Berry had a hand in it because it's a bit repetitive.
Smacking one.
Am I bothered? No, I'm not.
Joking about that, it's very, very good actually, and it just puts another dimension on it.
Yeah, well, I think that endorses as well that during the Victorian period,
we won the war.
They were moving more towards sanitising the concept of a nursery rhyme to be relating to children, and I think it was taken much more in that vein, and they used to take those what apparently appears to be innocent stories to talk to children about, and some of them certainly are just developed in the Victorian times. So, but it's the earlier ones that are actually much more salacious and much more with meaning. And I suppose it was the blog of the day, actually, James. You know. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
The blog's got anything to do with you, James?
No, I've no idea what he's talking about.
No, I didn't think you would.
James, maybe you could compose one with a hidden meaning about the usefulness of committees.
Oh, I love it. Yes, do.
There wouldn't be many lines to it.
No.
Well, I hope that was all right. It was just a fill-in situation because of Kieran. Kieran's actually going to, once he's got his microphone sorted out, then he's going to actually come back another day and talk to us.
Martin, can I just ask, what's the most recent, commonly accepted nursery rhyme? I mean, these go back to the 15th, 16th, 17th century. What's the most modern one? Is there a modern one?
Well, I think the modern ones probably emanate from the Victorian times, but had totally different types of meaning because they were much more sanitised. So I think
the most modern ones are on social media.
Well, actually, I suppose, it depends what
I'm joking.
what you call a nursery rhyme really nowadays. But the nursery rhymes that we tell our kids, the most recent ones, I guess, are the ones like Herbert has just described and things like that. And I'm trying to think. I think.
How about brew, barn Bigaroo, Cuthbert, Dibble and Grub? And it goes on.
That's not your nursery rhyme.
No.
It's just that we like Trumpton.
Yes, they recite that every morning in fire stations.
What?
Yeah.
What was that, Ivan?
I say
Well, that was
there's a
just
spell chat every morning in fire stations up
Oh,
and
right.
down the land.
Yeah, Ivan. What?
Pew Pew, Boundergrew, Cuthbert, Dibble and Grub. They were the characters in Trumpton. So don't pretend you can't remember Trumpton.
Haven't got a clue what you're talking about.
I don't know what he's talking about either.
No, I don't.
Yeah, no.
And I'm being serious, I don't.
Is that a misspent youth? Yeah, I'm serious, actually.
Was that in black
You're
and
probably too old for it. It was a very 70s, 80s
Yeah.
Carl's programme.
I was doing lots of different things in the 70s, you know, but it didn't involve nursery rhymes. So, right.
Your education is sadly lacking in some important phases, really.
It is, yeah. Why?
You know, you should really get to light in it a little bit.
Yeah.
Can I say I'm very light now. The accounts have been audited, everybody.
Yeah. They'll be on the web shortly.
We're legal. We're legal. I'd just like to thank you very much, Martin. I'm not sure about the goosey gander bit. I'm not sure about the fact that Henry VIII had VD. I'm not sure that the fact that you looked really quite happy when you said about knocking shop by appointment.
Royal appointment.
But it's obviously a fascinating area, one that tickles your particular fancy, and that says quite a lot, particularly left-leggers and things, some of these things that you've come up with. But thank you very much indeed. We appreciate it.
That's all right. Oh, thank you.
Can I just explain that though this is no longer publicised in the UK, we once come back to Zeebrugge with time to waste. So we dropped off the motorway onto National Route 1 through Belgium. And every 15 mile, there's a little sign on the side of the road says bar. And there's these ladies sitting in the window. They've not got no clothes on.
No, it's terrible.
I had to explain to Barbara that I was not thirsty. I did not want to stop at the bar. I was not thirsty.
Are you sure they're all women?
Oh yeah, that would be.
Now that's a very good question. But you know, with broadening your knowledge,
Find out.
I say we're broadening your knowledge, and it depends, of course, on what sort of upbringing you had. I was 42, and until I found out that a red light outside a house didn't signify that it was a Watney's house.
A very sheltered upbringing, Herbert.
I think I could explain that as a 20-year-old, I went to join the police force from a small town in Cambridgeshire, and we went into Oxford one night, and I was educated by a man who had been a cadet in the Metropolitan Police and who knew what a queer was. As a 20-year-old, I'd never heard of a queer. I didn't know what one was. I got educated very quickly.
Yeah.
How?
Now,
I was going to say my mind's one.
Don't go in.
Don't go there.
I must admit, I always like the expression "there's noughts so queer as folk."
Yeah.
I will say that one night in Mill Road in Cambridge,
Cool. Know it well.
yeah, I had an occasion to talk to a young lady on the side of the road.
Do you want to reconsider knowing it well, David?
When I noticed that he had a little bit of a moustache, and I was just about to grasp him in my hand when he ran across the road to what was then a set of toilets, and of course he went into the ladies' toilet. Well, being a gentleman as I am, I wouldn't follow him into the ladies, so I called for assistance and waited. And whilst I waited, he went out the window on the other side.
So, were you familiar with those toilets then, David?
Yeah, was that Philip? Was that?
Well, when I went, a very good pal of mine, who was a bit of a rogue, lives in Italy, and I took my twin sons to Italy when they're about 16 or 17, and we went to the golf course one day, and on the way to the golf course in Italy, this was about 12, 15 years ago, all the lay-bys have these ladies who are hanging around lay-bys. And my young lads were looking like this. And all I can tell you is that 2 days later, Jim took the boys, my two boys, to the golf club on their own. And they smiled thereafter.
Oh.
Always wanted to go and play golf.
Have many of you been to South Africa? How many have been to South Africa? Yeah. So we went to South Africa, and I actually wanted to go to a place up in the Karoo, and it was quite a long sort of back roads and things, and we went there. It was called Prince Albert. You might know it. The only reason I wanted to go to Prince Albert, nothing to do with the story actually, but the only reason I wanted to go there is the next town along is Hell, and it's got a mountain pass that is really quite treacherous. So I wanted to go there so I could say I'd been to hell and back. Anyway, that's not the story. The story is on the way back to Cape Town, then you go through the Karoo, which is a really long, Brian will know, it's a really long flat plain and roads that are as straight as I don't know what. And this road was probably 30 miles long, almost straight. And we were driving along this with sort of plains either side. And in the distance, we could see this light. And it was a sort of a light by the side of the road. There was absolutely nothing else there other than this one building with a big light above it. And as we got nearer to it, we could see that it actually said Ronnie's sex shop. So we thought, that's really strange, right in the middle of the Karoo, absolutely nothing. So as you do, you think, well, we're going to just investigate this. So we stopped, and turned out to be a restaurant and a cafe. The only thing was that it was a restaurant and cafe, and every so often this old man was sort of in a really mucky shirt, came out and with a key and went into this room with about 3 elderly ladies, and then they all came out with sort of carrier bags and things. So we never knew what went on there. But it was absolutely astounding because every 10 minutes a helicopter arrived and just stopped. They'd got a landing pad in the next field, and helicopters arrived, and people got out, had a meal, went into this back room, and then went off again. And that was really amazing. And if ever I go back to South Africa, I'm really going to have to go to the Karoo again and just see what's in that
by helicopter
room. Yeah, by helicopter, and see what's in that locked room.
Sample the delights.
Yeah, I don't know if you've come across that, anybody who's been to South Africa, but it's quite amazing.
No, I keep going back there.
Yeah.
My father was with the Canadian Pacific Steamships.
Oh, yeah.
In the 1920s, he was a junior officer on one of their first round-the-world trips. And they'd done a preview of this, and on one island they landed on, there were hot spring baths. And everybody just bathed naked in these, men and women. And the Canadian Pacific decided this really was not what the clientele would be paying for. So they'd said, you must separate these, and we can't have mixed bathing when we come. So the cruise ship landed, and everybody got off and went to the hot springs, and they'd been assured, everybody now separate, and they got there, and naked women were at one end and naked men were at the other, and there was a rope between the middle. And that was the separation to make it all nice.
They must have been to a Jewish wedding.
That's probably where the expression comes from, give them enough rope.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever realised when they're driving through Spain that our laws here are very different, and rather civilised. Ladies of the night are ladies any time of the day, as they should be. They are allowed to be on the side of the road, they're not allowed to be on the side of the road without a chair because ladies are entitled to sit down. The law states that the lady on the side of the road must have a chair, and that she must also have a high-vis jacket. The issues regarding the high-vis jacket are quite simple. I think you're supposed to wear the damn thing, but the girls, well, it's hot here, let's just put it that way. The girls wear less clothes, quite a lot less, so they put the high-vis jacket on the chair. And then the only other issue that I think that if you see a high-vis jacket on a chair and it's empty, then the lady is somewhere busy. Other than that, she'll be sitting there looking and an occasional wave and various things like that. Very slightly from what I found in South Africa, where I found there are the girls who can cross the road and those that don't seem to be able to. In Cape Town, they had this major problem of not being able to get to the other side of the road. This was demonstrated usually by one leg going out towards the road, quite high, and then coming down again as they changed their minds and decided they wouldn't cross.
Let's widen my education tonight.
I don't believe it for a minute, Ivan.